Hello everyone, it's finally time to take a look at the one and only Paranormal Paragon starter deck. And this one's going to be pretty interesting because, well, you can see that I have this all organized out. It is not your average deck. If you're interested in like a kind of wonky, fun, like a little bit different from the normal deck, this is definitely the deck for you because it is just not going to function like your average sandbag deck, and honestly not like your average TCG deck in general. But before we get into the kind of interesting, crazy stuff, the entire flowchart, let's just take a look at some of the cards that are a little bit more simple. So obviously you're going to be running some Forbidden Apples. They're a classic. You're then also going to be running Mystery Railguns. Once again, kind of a classic. So that's not really very strange, and the functionality is pretty normal. Then you're going to run some Paradigm Patrol Bots, which are pretty classic. They just kind of give you, that defensive little option that you want, and just an easy way to play some cards down early in the game. We'll take a look at the locations now. So you're going to be running a Prehistoric Zone. So this allows Ancient Terrans and cards with Paradigm in their name to get +1 in each stat, which is pretty like solid. It just gives you kind of a good way to just give power buffs. That's a classic. There's a power buff card in all of the new starter decks now that I think about it. But yeah, this deck is going to be running some Ancient Terrans. So if you want some support for the Terran starter deck, there are some of those, because this deck will have a similar discard pile orientation as a lot of sandbag decks do, but it's a little bit different, or maybe even a lot different, because as I said, it's a little bit more on the wonky side. But then you're going to have your Paradigm Trade Center, kind of just a regular old card that just at the start of each turn, both players can discard up to 2 cards and draw the same number of cards they discarded. It's really great to help people discard a ton of cards. Unfortunately, like I said, it's helping people discard cards. It's not just you, right? So your opponents are gonna discard cards, but really this is just gonna help you get sandbags discarded, and we'll talk about later why this deck especially cares about that. But yeah, just discarding sandbags, potentially getting some hand advantage, and just going through your deck, getting a big discard pile. It's a great card, but I definitely not recommend playing it as like your last location. I am going to talk through the entire strategy of this deck in this video, so be warned. So yeah, because I didn't think it was really necessary to make a whole nother video on the strategy, and I feel like the organization of this deck really is the strategy of it. Figuring out what cards go where, how they go, like timing wise. So yeah, so that's the Paradigm Trade Center. It's probably like a mid game. I'd say you want to use this to like set up. And then there's Paradigm Y01. This is going to be the most important location in the deck. It's the namesake of the deck, but unlike other decks, it's actually like insanely important, because what this does is during each of your turns, you can discard cards to your deck for a sandbag and add to your hand. First of all, being able to discard a card does mean you could discard a sandbag, so that gives you some advantage. This is unfortunately pretty good for your opponent as well. However, the reason why it's especially good for you and therefore worthwhile to run is because basically you're going to be running every single different sandbag, almost. Technically there are some that you're not running, but you're running almost every single different sandbag, and so this allows you to tutor out whatever sandbag you need for the situation, which is really good. And then those sandbags can help you get the cards you need. For example, Yami Gotokin's sandbag can tutor out a tech, and Paradigm Y01 sandbag, you can't see the effect right now, but it lets you draw a card. Sienda variant lets you get creatures. Lunasiga variant just lets you get basically anything if you're lucky. So definitely this helps you with just getting whatever you need, and we're going to see that the way this deck works getting specific sandbags is really important, and this allows you to do that strategically instead of just kind of like high rolling. So we'll get into that later. And a very similar card that's going to be super important for this deck is the Paradigm Guitarist. So right away you're going to see you must have 2 different sandbags in your discard pile to play it. That's going to be, spoiler alert, the gimmick of this deck is the creatures all require you to have specific sandbags in your discard pile for you to play them, which is going to give you basically, once you have it all set up, it's going to give you just a slight advantage over your opponent forever because those are still free cards. It's just a condition. But before you meet the condition, it is a bit janky. So we're going to talk about strategically how everything works. But this is also going to allow you, when it's destroyed, to search your deck for a sandbag that's not in your discard pile and discard it. And because you're discarding it, you do get to trigger the effect. So this is really good for just finding whatever sandbag you need. And yeah, you're going to need to be able to tutor stuff. So this is a great card. Basically, the major advantage of it that I would say kind of applies to any deck is just you get to tutor out a sandbag and just get advantage off of it, because if you like draw a card off this, that's just a really good card, especially with an above average stat line. So pretty strong card, might end up being a staple in general gameplay because it is pretty darn good. Now, we're finally going to talk about this kind of first line here that you can see. So, what's special about this first line here, and I'll swap actually into landscape mode so that you can see it as a line, is basically this is going to be your discard engine, because you can't just get sandbags into your hand and hope that they end up in your discard pile, because you're not going to end up discarding them magically. So this is the cards that you discard for. And what's great about these as well is that they're perfectly consistent in terms of actually most of them are perfectly consistent in terms of you can play them consistently, but they're also consistent in terms of you don't have to have any conditions met, which means these are kind of an early game thing. So this is stage 1, I would say, is to play these cards, right? There's this new Terran, which is a 2/2/2. They're all basically vanillas, 3/2/4s, a 1/0/3. Baron Cactus is a little bit low on stats in general, but just super good defensively, which is really important for this deck. So you definitely do want to be running it probably, unless you want to find some sort of other defensive piece. You really want to be able to have that discarding a card to play it though. So that's your kind of starting lineup. You're then going to be looking into these sandbags. These are the sandbags you need to be discarding. And yeah, you can see it's most sandbags. I've organized them in terms of their deck cost because that's what's going to be really important in this deck. So you got a bunch of regular variants. In terms of priority, I would say regular variant is really important, right? You always want to have access to sandbags, and we'll talk about the card that works with it, the Paradigm Core. But Paradigm Core is kind of one of the most starter-esque cards you can play, which is going to require you to have a 0 deck cost sandbag in your discard pile, but it's going to help tutor stuff, literally anything. This also may end up being a staple. We'll see how this deck ends up getting balanced, but yeah, at the end of your turn, you can destroy it and search your deck for a card at your hand, then discard a card. So you can get cards that aren't sandbags, which is great, and also you can discard sandbags, which is also great. So you really want to start out with the sandbag regular variants so that you can get this thing onto the board and just get advantage off of that. Then there's also the 1-cost sandbags. There's only 2 of them. It's a YO1 variant and a Bro 2/2 variant. The Bro 2/2 variant isn't necessarily going to stay in your discard pile. You have to be really careful with that this card is staying in your discard pile as long as you need it and you don't jump the gun on equipping it to something. But aside from that, you can really go for the Paradigm YL1 variant sandbag whenever you want to just get a card draw and set up your 1 cost. But you'll see this is like a 310. It's not a super important card for setup. So generally I'd say this is not necessarily your first priority to get these two. But you do want to think about generally when you're trying to get sandbags, what is there, like how many options do you have that are similar to them in terms of deck cost really? So like, as much as I said to prioritize these, there's 5 of them. There's only 2 of these. So that's a little bit more tricky. But the payoff is not insane. Definitely, of course, you want to make sure that you're setting up whatever cards are in your hand so that you can play them. And the reason I tell you all this strategy, you might be thinking, well, wait, but isn't it just like whatever sandbags I draw? No, it's not. Remember, Paradigm YO1 and Paradigm Guitarist and Paradigm Core are going to be your friends. They're going to be tutoring stuff. So you really want to know what the order of operations is, priorities, and it all really depends on your hand, but also just like what you need in the moment. So then we have our 2-cost sandbags. Each of these is pretty powerful and does something pretty exciting. I'd say the Ascenda variant's kind of, it's a little bit whatever, but the Bro 2 variant, definitely whenever you need something defensive or if you really need a creature to stay on the board, that's when I would recommend tutoring that out. And remember, that's not necessarily going to stay in your discard pile, so you're going to be careful with that one. But then there's the Yami Gotica variant, which is basically going to get you attack. So if you need defensive value, once again, but this will actually stay in your discard pile, which is great. And what's great is this is a way to discard another card if you're ever short on like discard options. So you always want to keep that in mind. That's something you can tutor if you just need to discard something. Because it'll help you get 1 more discard in. It'll help you get attack, which will help you stall. If you need to destroy something, then you can use that to tutor out Mystery Railgun. You really have access to most of your deck at all times, as long as you are like tutoring the right stuff and choosing the right times to use cards like Paradigm YO1, so that you really know what you want to target. And then there's the Luna Seekin variant sandbag. There's only 1 of them. So this is a 3 deck cost sandbag. It's going to allow you to play the, well, this was for the 2 costs. You can see it's kind of just like a little beat stick. This is the Paradigm Inner Hypnotist, and it's a 2/1/2. So that's like decent defensive value, nothing amazing. In general, none of these are like, well, Paradigm Core is quite good, but these 3, they're not like insane or anything. But you really just want to get access to, these 3. You really just want to get access to all of them, because once you've done that, you just have advantage. Like your opponent is not getting 3/1/0s for free. They're getting like 2/1/1s or something. So you just want to kind of have this slightly better deal, but you're not going to like instantly win the game or anything. What's going to be really important is, as fast as you can, get 1 of each sandbag into the discard pile. Now, my recommendation to really accelerate that is immediately if you search out the Sandbag Luna Masika variant. This is the easiest card to brick on. You only have 1 copy of it in your deck, but the good news is it lets you look at the top 5 cards of your deck and add 1 to hand, which is going to actually help you with your consistency. So I would definitely just immediately, when you have a search, try to search this, discard it. The one exception I would say is if you need to get access to Paradigm Core. So yeah, this is kind of your flow chart. You use the cards on top to discard the cards in the middle so that you have access to all the cards on the bottom. And then finally, you have your boss cards, which are the Paradigm Magician and the Advanced Android, which are going to be basically both optimal when you have everything in your discard pile, or that is to say every deck cost. So you want to get as fast as you can everything online, because once this deck is online, it doesn't stop being online. It just is really strong. So let's take a look at the Paradigm Magician. This card's pretty hard to play in any other deck because you are going to need at least 4 different deck costs in your discard pile to play it. And at the end of each turn, it allows you to get a sandbag from your deck or a discard pile and then discard a card. So you can use it to get sandbags into your hand. But realistically, I think what you're going to do with it is just get a sandbag and discard that sandbag to trigger it. Whatever you need for the scenario. And this card is actually a really fun boss card because it's so versatile and because you're not actually going to like really focus on abusing any of its abilities as much as just, or you will, but in creative ways, not in like, oh, I have a negate. It's going to be like, I'm going to get a sandbag so I can get my tech so that I can protect this to survive another turn. And then the next turn, I'm going to want to protect it some more. So maybe I get this sandbag into my discard pile. And then maybe if at any point I'm feeling like I can't really protect it, I might get this for advantage, similar to Sika. I might search this out at some point if I really want a 4/4/4. There's so many ways to just really utilize the versatility of this card. And it's a 3/3/3 for basically free once you have everything online. So that's just a great stat block. And it's just a really kind of powerful card in general. The deck is like full of tutors and just very versatile as long as you set stuff up. So then you have the Advanced Android, which more or less is going to get +1 in each stat for every single different deck cost in your discard pile. And it's not quite what it says word for word. There are some balancing things, but that is also pretty good, because once you have all these in your discard pile, we know 5/5/5s are just amazing, really great stat line. So this is just kind of your boss from a stat perspective. It helps you take out some strong creatures, and you're hoping to wait on it, but if you really need to, you can play it early. So yeah, there we go. That's the Paradigm deck. This is